realization is sometimes described as unconditioned, in contrast to what we call the conditioned mind. We're moving from the conditioned mind to a state of unconditioned mind. I know there's a risk of talking about in terms of dualities here, but from the point of the unconditioned mind encompasses the conditioned mind. But the point about the word unconditioned is there's no bridge from the conditioned mind to the unconditioned mind. It's I hesitate to use the cliched phrase, but it is a quantum leap. You're moving from one state to another state without going through any state in between. So that term unconditioned is quite useful. It means that there are no conditions which actually lead to it. It's I suppose you could say it's revelatory. Now we're in some quite unusual territory here. The Yoga Vasistha is described by its translator as a scripture. And we're at a section now where we're told that God doesn't really come into it. So it's important to bear that in mind. What Vasistha is extolling here is self-effort. And he carries on with this. Rama asked, Lord, you are indeed the knower of truth. Pray tell me, what do people really call God, fate, or Daivam? Daivam is the word for God, apparently. Vasistha replied, the fruition of self-effort by which one experiences the good and evil results of past action is called fate or Daivam by people. People also regard that as fate or Daivam, which characterizes the good and evil nature of such results. When you see that this plant grows out of this seed, it is regarded as an act of this Daivam. But I feel that fate is nothing but the culmination of one's own action. So basically, Vasistha's saying that we're completely responsible for our present circumstances. I think we've got to be careful about reading a lot into that. The point of Vasistha's teaching here is really to motivate us, to give us a feeling of self-empowerment rather than fatalism. We're not to be fatalistic about our current situation, but to feel empowered to take full responsibility for it and to move on. So fate is nothing but the culmination of one's own action. And we must remember that Rama is in a state of despondency, and that state of despondency can lead to inactivity and to a sense of what's the point. So what Vasistha, I would say Vasistha is doing here, or part of what he's doing, is to embolden Rama to take responsibility for the situation rather than bewailing it or bemoaning it, and to move on. In the mind of man are numerous latent tendencies, and these tendencies give rise to various actions, physical, verbal and mental. Surely one's actions are in strict accordance with these tendencies. It cannot be otherwise. Such is the course of action. Action is non-different from the most potent among latent tendencies, and these tendencies are non-different from the mind, and the man is non-different from the mind. So this is seeming a little bit fatalistic, isn't it? He's saying we're a bunch of tendencies, latent or otherwise, and that constitutes who we are. We cannot but act in accordance with these tendencies. But then he goes on to say, one cannot definitely determine whether categories like mind, latent tendencies, action and fate are real or unreal. Hence the men of wisdom have alluded to them symbolically. I think what he's saying here is you've got to take this not as concrete truth. It's a way of thinking, and we use this way of thinking to our own advantage rather than extol it as something real and truthful. What the Yoga Vasistha is doing really is getting us beyond our concepts and our ideas and our beliefs. It's not wanting to sell us other concepts and beliefs, so that we must always bear that in mind. The Yoga Vasistha is about getting beyond our ideas. But anyway, Rama goes on though and asks a question within that framework of latent tendencies. Holy Sir, if the latent tendencies brought forward from the previous birth impel me to act in the present, where is freedom of action? In other words, if all we can do is react to our own latent tendencies, well, surely our fate is a foregone conclusion. So we've got the problem of free will here, basically. So let's see what Vasistha's got to say about that. Rama, the tendencies brought forward from past incarnations are of two kinds, pure and impure. The pure ones lead you towards liberation, and the pure ones invite trouble. You are indeed consciousness itself, not inert physical matter. You are not impelled to action by anything other than yourself. Hence, you are free to strengthen the pure latent tendencies in preference to the impure ones. The impure ones have to be abandoned gradually and the mind turned away from them little by little, lest there should be violent reaction. By encouraging the good tendencies to act repeatedly, strengthen them. The impure ones will weaken by disuse. You will soon become absorbed in the expression of the good tendencies in good actions. It sounds like a course of cognitive behaviour therapy here. We have to ask ourselves, who's this person that's choosing which tendencies to go with? If we're nothing but the sum of our tendencies, how do we know which part of us is choosing which tendencies to go for? It might be our impure tendencies which are encouraging us to go with the impure tendencies. How do we know? How do we know? I think the answer is what he said earlier on, is that you're indeed consciousness itself. You can only tell if you've got some awareness of the fact that you're consciousness, that you're not actually the latent tendencies. Psychologically you are, but the basis of the Yoga Vasistha and its spiritual teaching is that we are not these latent tendencies. We're not this psychology. We are being, we are consciousness. We are not physical automata.